Welcome to the Demographics Weatherman video podcast. Scott McDonald brings you the forecast trends you need to know to establish and build your professional practice.
Hello, I'm Scott McDonald, and I am the Demographic Weatherman. Wow, thank you so much down there, you studio audience with the cheap tickets. Hey, I'd like to welcome Mike Green, who's at our Demographics Weather Desk. Mike, how you doing?
Yes, I can confirm there are people that live in that area. Back to you, Scott.
Okay. Now, today's topic is the rich. Now, if you want to have a practice in an area where people are really wealthy, it's not going to be like any other location in the United States. The rich don't act the same way, neither do they value your practice in the same way as others do. So, if you want to practice among the wealthy, let's define who they are. If we were to divide the United States up into quintiles, in other words, into 20% in even segments as to how many people there are, the top 20% are going to be the rich. Now, don't fall for this garbage about the top 1%. The 1%ers are usually such a small group and so exclusive that they are not a practical target to go after. We're talking about that top 20. But what about you? Most doctors, by the way, do not fall in that top 20%. In fact, many of them, majority, fall within the second quintile, second 20%. Therefore, there's a little disconnect between the people who are wealthy and doctors. Don't be surprised if they may look at you and not buy whatever you say immediately. Now, let's go on and look at some maps. First of all, this is a map of the United States broken out by the median household income per state. And what you're going to notice is there's obviously some difference. I mean, Mississippi is going to be at the low end. Virginia and Maryland have really zoomed ahead as far as median household income, and we suspect they're going to continue. The incomes in the United States have become more disparate, meaning they're separate. And in fact, in that 20% at the top, the distance between the top of the 20% and the bottom of that 20% actually is getting quite large. It means that the rich are getting richer, which is no surprise to anybody. Now, if we were to change the map and look at the counties throughout the United States, what you're going to notice here is, well, the distance between the counties that have a lot of money and are poor, particularly in the more prosperous states, is not very far. So if you look at New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts, or you look over at California, the places where people are earning a lot and earning a little aren't that far apart, not geographically. And this is important in a way, because there used to be a belief that the rich and the poor were always kept separate geographically. Not so true. They actually live pretty close together. But what attracts them to one practice to another isn't necessarily who's closest to their office or their home. It is the fact that you are appealing to people through those things which they consider most important. Now, let's jump into the defining affluence for just a second. Obviously, the people who are rich are going to have more of something than the people who are poor. What have they got more of? Money. Now, just because people have money doesn't necessarily say that that's enough of a difference in how people live just because some people have it. Instead, there's another factor let's look at, and that is education. The rich will typically have a higher education level than people on average. Those people with lots of training, lots of education, have more money. But here's something else. It doesn't mean people with education are smarter. What it means is their perspective on time is different. Therefore, they will look at what you offer to them and say, is this worth it to me in the long run? Procedures that may take a longer period of time or serve as an investment in their beauty, in their health, in their energy level, that may be of more value to them because of their educational perspective. Now, there are a couple of things that are going to get me in trouble, but let me just bring it up right away. Race and culture. Now, I'm not saying that people of a certain race are going to have more money than people who don't or belong to a particular race. But what you're going to find is culture trumps race. People who are affluent do not care about the racial background of their friends and neighbors who are also rich. They care about their culture, their lifestyle. Do they have the same values? And therefore, you have to remember, the rich are not monolithic in terms of their demographic character. We also have to take into account competition. I'll talk a little more about this in a second, but in every area where there's lots and lots of rich people, there's going to be a higher percentage of competition. The population of providers per population is higher among the rich. Talk about it why in a second. But another factor that we notice that's very important is age. Because if you happen to be in your 20s and 30s and have a great ripping career, you're still going to make more money when you're in 50s and 60s than as you were in your 20s and 30s. People who are savers, those people who've already gone through a lot of trials in life in which they've acquired stuff, will retain more money. They'll have more money. And therefore, the disposable income of the United States tends to reside primarily with the older people. Now, I want to go into facts regarding treatment, and this is kind of important for all health care, but of particular importance is preventive care. The people who are rich brush their teeth, they jog, they'll diet, they'll try to take care of themselves. This is a function of education as much as anything else. But you see, preventive care is popular for them, and it has an implication for the way you treat. Rich people are often going to have fewer clinical needs than those people who are poorer. The people who have type 2 diabetes don't get off the couch. They don't control their diet and exercise. People who are affluent do. Another factor, as I mentioned earlier, was about competition ratio, and here's why. People who are in the middle and lower classes kind of like to go to a neighborhood where the providers of services tend to be in the upper income area. They like, in fact, going to the rich areas to get care because there's a perception that doctors in rich areas are better. Now, you probably know that's not necessarily true, but it's a perception that exists. The reason why competition is higher is because of discretionary income. People can be convinced to get procedures that people who have less money can't afford or wouldn't even think about. That's where you can be of service to those people. Now, a third fact regarding those people who are affluent is they don't waste money. Now, you may think, well, they're not quite as living as close to the bone as those people who are poorer. But the truth is, those people who are wealthy didn't get that way because they spent stupidly. And because of this, they may actually require more time to talk to regarding why they should get a procedure than those people who have a lower socioeconomic level. Because keep in mind, those people who are wealthy in the top 20% may have as much education and more money than a lot of the doctors. Therefore, they don't look in awe by a person who has an advanced degree. Now, a fourth thing I want you to keep in mind is no group is as important to having a recall system as the wealthy. A recall system that works with email or texting or snail mail is good, but all three of them are best. You see, these people are busy and they need to be reminded of what's going on in their lives when they have appointments. So, invest in a recall system. Do not worry so much about investing in an advertising system because the wealthy do not respond to ads as much as their lower socioeconomic brethren. A couple of other things. Convenience really counts. For those people who are affluent, they want to travel little time to your office, they want to have convenient hours, and they want to be treated when they walk into the office by the staff as though they're important. They're used to that, and therefore they want convenience. If you do not cater to them in terms of the convenience factors, a lot of affluent people will not stay. And this brings me to the last point, loyalty. Yes, having loyalty is very important because you see, the affluent will recommend the affluent to your office. It's the best way to get people to come in. Of course, loyalty needs to be earned, but with the affluent, it needs to be maintained. Spend the time necessary in order to build that loyalty. So let's look at some maps. Now, this is a very interesting and slightly unusual map because what it shows is the counties in the United States that are broken out not upon median household income, but rather the wealth that resides in each county. Now, if you're looking at a place that has high median household income, terrific. But what you're really looking for is a lot of people who are wealthy, and that's what this map shows. It's necessary for you, if you're going to have any kind of a practice, to have sufficient numbers of people to be able to keep the practice going, to keep it afloat. Now, this map shows the numbers, the actual numbers of the very wealthy. Now, it's nice to know, but you see, here's a little trick with this map. Whenever somebody tries to say, oh yeah, it's a rich area, what they're very often saying is there are a lot of people here, and within that distribution of the population, there's a lot of people who have money. You would expect that California, for example, would have a lot more wealthy people than Arizona. Not because the population with money is higher by percentage, but rather in their raw numbers, there's more of those people here. That is why, for example, people like to move to New York City and to Boston, because they're very big cities, and yes, they are going to have a lot of affluence, but they're also going to have a lot of poverty. This map we call greed. Now, believe me, I didn't name this map, but it shows some very interesting facts about an area. What we're talking about is, if everybody earns a median, if you're very far from the median, you have a significant number of standard deviations above or below. When you look at the areas that are red, that shows that there's a higher standard deviation from the median. In other words, there's more people who are more affluent than others. However, you got to keep in mind this blue area, because the blue area shows something that I like to remind doctors of often. If your job is to make money, and to make a lot of money, what you need to do is to look for those locations where your profits are going to be higher. That means the cost of living will be lower. It's not a thing you should ignore. That's why I say, hey, look for the blue areas if you want to know where the future is going in terms of positive employment. In fact, let me go to this map. This shows 4 regions of the United States, 4. And if you'll notice on the East Coast, here's the real story. The people who are older and in those communities that are not growing very much are going to have a higher income. They have a higher income because employers need to pay them more. If you look at that region in the South, it's about $26.32 per hour per employee. That's how much it costs employers. Look in the Northeast, however, and you're up around $33.18 in order to keep those people employed. Now, if you are a major investor, where are you going to want to hire new people? Where are you going to want to set up your new factory? Yeah, you're not going to want to go to those places that it's expensive to hire people. That's why in previous episodes we've talked about the minimum wage that is skyrocketing in some places, and it's genuinely making a difference, and not for the betterment. This shows the changes in per capita income. You see, I don't want you to get this idea that as we're talking, you're going to rush out and start a practice or buy a practice in one particular site. You want something in the future. Therefore, the trends that you're looking for, those winds of change that we always talk about, it means that you've got to find the place that has the positive increase in per capita income, and it's not universal. Oh, sure, the United States goes through ups and downs as a national economy, but the reality is your practice isn't going to be national. It's probably going to be based upon a relatively small geographic area of between 3 and 7 zip codes. That's the economy you need to know about. Now, last of all, this is one of those great maps I love. It's the migration of personal income. It shows you where the money's going. Okay, now here's a fact. People who are rich are not going to move. People who are poor are not going to move. It's the people in the middle who are. The people in the middle who are in that 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quintiles, those are the ones you have to track, because when their money moves, that's where the part of the country is going to show most change, and you need to be aware This is an important fact for you in selecting sites for practice. In this general circumstance, purple is not good. It's better to consider the green, because the green is going to be those places that serve as destinations of income. Now, let me talk to you in conclusion. My company helps people figure out where to put practices and to evaluate sites. Maybe you have a practice for sale, maybe you're starting a practice up from scratch. Our job is to test the viability of the site based upon the type of practice you want. Now, I like to remind people when it comes to money, corporate practices are not the best thing for the wealthy. It tends to be too impersonal for them. On the other hand, those people who are poor, corporate practices are a boon idea, good thing. What I want you to know is you have to know what kind of practice you want in order to identify a site that will serve you well. You can go to our website at drdemographics.com. We have all of our products and prices listed. We also have podcasts available through iTunes as well as from our website. And of course, other versions of this video podcast for you to take a look at on different aspects of the United States demography. I love what I do, and if we can help you, please let us know how. Drop me a line at info@drdemographics.com, and we'll get back to you. You can also call our office at 1-800-424-6222. And thanks again for watching.